Your polling numbers are pretty bad right now. They're as bad as they've ever been for your government since you took power in 2015.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. If you caught our Northern Perspective After Dark live stream last Sunday, you'll recall that our friend Barnaby made the observation that traditionally left-leaning media outlets are starting to be a little less favorable towards Trudeau and the Liberals.
We're inclined to agree. Let's watch this CBC reporter make Trudeau squirm with a tough line of questioning regarding his poll numbers. Before we get to that, help us keep this channel growing strong by hitting that like button to help push this out to more viewers, and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of our next episode. If you would like to support the channel, check out the description of this video for more details. Now let's get into it.
Your polling numbers are pretty bad right now. They're as bad as they've ever been for your government since you took power in 2015. But the group that I really want to talk to you about today is Gen Z millennials, and you are polling particularly bad with this group. And I wonder if you reflect on it, why you think this group is leaving you in very big numbers, because they came out to vote for you in 2015, right?
Well, that's quite the opening.
Yeah, she wastes no time, does she?
You're like, yeah, they're pretty bad.
Truth.
All right, well, so you've lost your most valuable asset in your voting base with the young voters. What do you say, Trudeau?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we worked with them 8 years ago to reverse a government that didn't do anything on climate change, that didn't believe in inclusive economic growth, kept with trickle down, give tax breaks to the wealthiest. We managed to turn that around significantly, and we're in a really good position when the pandemic hit. And then the past few years have been really, really hard, particularly on young people, where there is now a sense not just of the challenges of paying for groceries or paying for rent or anything, but the idea of home ownership, the idea of a really strong, exciting future seems further and further away now than it did just a few years ago. And that loss of hope and optimism is devastating for people's morale. Of course, they're gonna grumble at government, and they're gonna say that the world's going in the wrong direction, and we have to step up and make sure we're solving for that.
So everything was going great until the pandemic hit. That's basically what he's saying.
No, you missed it. He was saying that prior to getting into government, it was the Harper Conservatives' fault, and they messed everything up, and it was trickle-down economics, and they were giving tax breaks to the wealthy, and everything was bad. And then in 2015, they got in, and everything was better. It's only the last few years that things have been bad since the pandemic. It's not the Liberals' fault, you guys. It's the pandemic. One of the main reasons why millennials are not voting for you anymore, Trudeau, is because we're old enough to have families now. And we're seeing that either we can't afford homes, or those of us who can, we're living in areas where it's not even safe to take our kids to the park anymore because of the homelessness and substance epidemics that you've created due to your horrible policies.
I hear you talking about how things have gotten worse for young people in this country since the pandemic, which there's truth to that, for sure. But for sure, things were not great before the pandemic too, right? Like you mentioned housing. I remember back in 2015 when you appointed yourself youth minister, remember, like you were like the guy, right? Yep. You campaigned on affordable housing. That was such a big part of your thing back then.
The face that he has, he's like, I'm gonna get killed with this question. He knows it's coming. He knows it's coming. And the question that's coming, even we know what's coming, is why haven't you done anything? That was your whole campaign. You haven't done anything.
Because it's the Conservatives' fault.
It's all the Conservatives' fault, you guys.
And since you took power in 2015, the benchmark housing prices have gone up 70% in this country. The average rent is now north of $2,000 a month. It's going up like $100 a month. How would you respond to the criticism that your government in the 8 years that it's been in power has done very little to bring more homes to market in this country?
I guess the question I'd ask is, how much worse would it have been if we hadn't put forward a national housing strategy in 2017 with $70 billion worth of investment that allowed for 2 million people, families, to get into new homes?
Wow. How much worse would it have been? What, if the Conservatives stayed in power? It would have been better. I was able to buy a home when the Conservatives were in power. I would not be able to buy that same home today.
I love this guy. I don't like your question. So I'm going to ask a different question, and I'm going to answer that one instead, because your question is not going to make me look as flattering as my question will. See, it's how much worse would things have been if we didn't dump $70 billion into accomplishing nothing except skyrocketing housing prices? But it's the Conservatives' fault.
Somehow.
After 10 years of a Conservative government that did nothing on housing. I mean, everyone understands housing takes a long lead time to actually make a difference. And if we hadn't got the federal government back into the business of housing, then everything would be much worse right now.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, I thought the federal government's primary responsibility was not housing. Did you not say that a few weeks ago? Maybe a couple months ago? Not that long ago.
Yeah, it's right here.
Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
Apparently it wasn't housing, even though you said it was housing, and then it's not because people are angry at you about it. Whatever people are angry at you about, it's not your responsibility, or it's a Conservative's fault.
And again, housing cost half of what it does today when Stephen Harper was in charge. Half.
And here's the other thing. What did they do? They drastically increased the amount of people coming into this country, and they drastically increased the amount of bureaucracy in the municipalities.
They brought so many people into this country, they don't even know how many people they brought into this country.
They lost 1 million people. They lost 1 million people, everybody. That was our video the other day. They lost 1 million people. They're bringing so many people in, they don't know where they're going.
They lost track of them.
This is where we are. So if you don't even know where these people are, how are you going to get them a house?
So we actually kept things, on a slightly better track than they are. But there is so much more to do, and that's exactly what we're doing.
This is slightly better.
But you could have done nothing, and things would have been better than they are right now.
Yeah, like literally.
Canada's immigration numbers have increased significantly on your watch, and I want to be clear, this is not a criticism of immigration.
Yes, it is.
TD Bank just said those immigration numbers could cause the housing shortfall to increase by 500,000 units in 2 years. And so why wasn't there a plan to ensure that this influx of people matched our housing needs better?
Because it seems like people on the left, they don't really have plans. It's just, doesn't this sound like a wonderful idea? Oh yeah, Bob, that's a great idea. Okay, let's do it. No forethought, no afterthought. They just do it.
And it's like, let's hope this happens. Right? Like that's all it is. It's hope and a prayer. Not even a prayer, because they don't believe in prayer. It's just hope. Or maybe not even that. Because then they're on to the next shiny thing that they see.
Like, why no plan?
Oh, that is part of what we've been doing as a plan to make sure that we're responding to shortages in the construction industry, that we're bringing in the right kinds of skilled trades as well. That is also something that has been shifting over the coming years. These are not things that can turn on a dime, unfortunately. Government moves extremely slowly in responding to things, but it is moving because you don't want a government lurching around everywhere and flipping back and forth. You want a plan that's going to steadily make things better in tangible ways over the coming year, over the coming years, over the coming decade.
Let me translate that. So instead of not having a plan and running everywhere quickly, we want to not have a plan and run everywhere slowly. That's basically what he's saying. And she asked him directly, so you increase the amount of people that are coming in by a lot. Why was there no plan to have housing for these people? Well, it was part of the plan to bring in tradespeople. That only makes sense if all of these people are tradespeople. But you didn't even look at the existing numbers coming in and convert all of those people to tradespeople. Like, if there was a plan, what you would do is you would shift your focus on immigration to bringing in the vast majority of people in that program as tradespeople. You then get those people to start building the houses for all of the people that you then plan to bring in later on. Then when you know that your housing build rate is going to or closely match your immigration rate, coupled with all of the rest of the Canadians that need housing, now you're on the right track. Then you can call Bob down at immigration and say, okay, Bob, we can let more people in. Great. I'm glad we had a plan, boss. Otherwise, people would be living under bridges. Oops.
And that's where understanding and bringing in all the different factors, from global shortages to supply chains to inflation and interest rates to purchasing power, these are the kinds of things that come into building a plan like that, including around immigration numbers.
Do you think you've moved too slow, though?
I always say we should have, could have moved faster.
We should have, could have moved faster. And he said earlier about government moves slowly. Yeah, and it started to move 30% slower when you added 30% more government employees.
Yeah, how does that even work?
You permanently increased the annual spend of the government. It's ridiculous. And like 30%. The government is not a small organization, everybody. The government has 300,000 people. So that's like increasing it by about 70,000 people. 70,000 people! That's nuts! And he wonders why nothing gets done. You've added all of these new people, nothing gets done. Oh, we should have, could have moved. Get out of here.
I want to talk to you before we go today a little bit about your main challenger, Pierre Poilievre, because they are now in majority win territory. But the young people, they're actually going to the Conservatives, right? Like right now, you're the third place party, but the Conservatives are the first place party.
In the House?
In the polls, sorry.
Well, so, I mean, first of all, how many of our young people are actually answering polls?
Well, I don't think David Coletto at Abacus Data is talking to landlines. I think he's talking to them.
There's all sorts of questions, but the reality is polls. We were lower in the polls than we are now. 2 months before the 2015 election that we won in a majority. We were lower in the polls now in 2019 before we won that election as well. Polls are going to go up and down. In 2 years away from an election, if people are going to give more scrutiny to Pierre Poilievre right now and to the so-called solutions he's putting forward, I think that's good for democracy, and I think that is just fine. We have work to do, and we're focused on delivering for Canadians, and we're going to continue to over the next 2 years until the election.
Look, I've been to his leadership convention, and we've been to his rallies, and we've talked to a lot of his supporters, people that have driven across the country to see him, to see this guy. And I would say that the energy around him is not dissimilar to the energy around you in 2015. And so, does that keep you up at night? Are you worried?
I think Mr. Poilievre has been very, very clear that he sees a radically different future for the country than what we've been building around climate, around inclusive economic growth, around reconciliation, around evidence-based policy, around defending people's fundamental rights, than we have been working on as a government. And I'm confident that as Canadians look at the two very different visions for the kind of country we want to be, there are going to be some really important and exciting political discussions happening around kitchen tables, boardroom tables, dining room tables, and all that.
So here's the thing. If you look at the polling today, and you look at the trend today, the Conservatives have a very steady and consistent trend line up. If you look at the trend line for the Liberals, you have a very steady and consistent trend line down. Now, Fox dug up the polling for the year that Trudeau got elected first, 2015. Now, here, there's actually a trend line for the Conservatives that is down in the middle of the year, and then it goes up, and then there's a stark fall between October 4th and October 9th. Something happened there. And then in late September, the Liberal popularity took off, but the trend line for the Liberals throughout that whole year was positive. Now, Polls go up and down. Yes, they do. But the difference is you don't look at a poll by itself. You look at it over time. So if we compare 2015 to now, it can be argued that it's very similar and that this is not a one-time thing. This is over time. And I guarantee you, Trudeau is not telling the truth whenever he says, we're not worried about this. Are you kidding? If you are legitimately not worried about this, you need a new political strategist in the Liberal Party. But everybody, that's why they engage these strategy firms. Because they tell them, listen, this is how you're trending. Not this is how you're polling. This is how you're trending.
Because remember, a poll is just one data point somewhere in the set. A trend is when you look at all the different points in the set and make a conclusion based on all of them.
Now, if the polling was going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, sure. What a strategist may tell you is Canadians aren't really sure over time who they're looking at.
And that's kind of how it was in 2015 if you look at the graph.
Yeah, they're crossing each other. They cross each other and intersect 1, 2, 3 times. Almost 4. So people were really back and forth. In this polling for this year, that's not the case. There was like maybe 1 intersection, close to 2. But since that 1 intersection, it's been all up for the Conservatives and all downhill for the Liberals. I guarantee you, the Liberals are extremely concerned.
And they keep saying, oh, you know, there's a long time until the election. Is there? We see the NDP gaining ground as well. They may decide to pull the plug at any time because they think that they can get more seats now as opposed to if they hang on.
Yeah, let's just be real about the NDP. They're Singh is not going to be prime minister, right? Everybody knows this. Singh knows this. Don't play him for a fool. He knows this. The goal of the NDP is to increase the amount of seats that they have. That's their goal right now. So one poll that we saw them potentially getting 40 seats, and the Liberals were down to like 80. So if you're Jagmeet Singh and you're able to increase the number of seats you have in your party from 25 to 40, that's almost 100% more. You could declare victory by winning that. Absolutely, you could. You can say, look what we did. Look what I did under my leadership. And as a party member, how could you argue with that? You couldn't. Your party leader, even though he's, sometimes a clown, under him, the party increased the number of seats by almost 100%. You cannot argue with that math.
And you've got to keep your seat.
And you've got to keep your seat.
Pretty enticing.
So if I guarantee you, Jagmeet's watching the polling as well. If he sees an opportunity, why wouldn't you take that?